All right, we got another one coming at you. So this one I called Fallback Defense. So this actually, the deployment here is a little unusual, and you'll see why in a minute. Basically, what I'm trying to do is defend my guns. They outnumber me pretty significantly, and they have cavalry and a lot more kind of mobile infantry than I do. So essentially what I'm trying to do is protect my guns as much as possible. So here I'm putting on their little accuracy modifiers, and I'm going for their artillery at first. So obviously hitting them pretty horrendously, just absolutely horrendously with the shrapnel shot there. And I've got 2 of my guns firing over there on their left side, and 2 of my guns firing over here on the right side. Because I want to get them to, I don't want them to be able to make these kind of long flanking runs. And again, like, they're just going to throw their cavalry away if they do that. But they also cause casualties and disrupt my line, and I don't want that. So I'm trying to kind of whittle down their cavalry as much as possible as I can. I get into some problems here. I call this one Fallback Defense because this initial line that I have my artillery on is kind of the best spot that I had. I wanted to be able to start firing at them pretty much as soon as the battle commenced. But because of this weird ridge here, it actually disrupts the ability of my infantry to fire because of kind of the folds of the road. What I would have to do is kind of extend this line way out, and like this little ridge here kind of gets in the way, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I can't, especially these guys here on my left, I can't emplace them without getting them up on top of this hill. And if I did that, if I extended the line up that way, they'd all just kind of go on that and outflank it, right? So I have to refuse my left flank here. I'm expecting their cavalry to make an end run around, which is why I kind of deployed in this sort of turtle. But what you'll see I do is coming up pretty soon, when they start getting into range, after I've kind of dealt with their cavalry a little bit, I actually pack these guys up and I move them back to a secondary ridge up here where I have a little bit more open lanes of fire for my riflemen. And it was pretty risky because it was a decision I made like in the moment, because I knew that if I let these guys continue advancing up here, I'd lose my artillery. And I really didn't want to do that. Because right now they're like my best asset. Going up against, so this is the Nagaoka. They're relatively sort of imperialized, I guess. Like they support the Shogun, but a lot of their troops are, like mine, are riflemen and sort of modern. So anyway, here you see I'm starting to move my guns. I'm trying to redeploy my infantry. And the biggest problem I have right now is my left flank, right? Because like I can't fire over this hill. Here comes the artillery department from the Navy. This is actually really ineffective, as you can see. I don't cause a lot of casualties with it. They didn't manage to move out of the way. I hit a couple of them. And yeah, here comes their suicide charge with their 11 saber cavalry. And you can see the difficulty, right? The line of sight. I can't fire until they crest this hill. And by the time they crest that hill, it's too close. These are useless dudes. So my spearmen are up there fighting around. More or less, I moved them up to cover the withdrawal of my guns. And I knew that it was risky. I knew that they were going to take a ton of casualties, especially on the withdrawal there. But there was really nothing else I could do. And right here, I'm stuck in this goofy spot. Because of the folds of the road here, I can't move them up, right? Because if I move them up here, they're going to get basically 2 volleys without being able to respond because of the way that the AI kind of moves and stops and then readies up and then goes. So ultimately what I do is I end up moving them back onto this kind of secondary ridge here. So I let them take the high ground, but in doing so, when they come up over the ridge, I actually am able to open up on them. And in the meantime, right, I don't have my guns employed because they're just moving. I've got these riflemen kind of standing out, making this sort of sacrificial stand. And I'm just trying to pin them in place and move around with my cavalry. But my cavalry, trying to take out their cavalry is good in melee, mine's less good in melee. So I'm taking some pretty heavy casualties with that, and they're moving up a couple of riflemen into the melee. So I have to get my fucking cavalry out of there real quick. And I wait until just the last moment, and I get them out. And at least it's peeling off a couple of their units so that I can sort of fiddle around with them a little bit and kind of let this line collapse. But as you can see, right, they're just crunching into these depleted lines of infantry, and I've got to move them back pretty soon too. And I'm waiting for my friggin' guns to get set up so that I can start using them again. And it's honestly like it's not the best terrain, and because I was outnumbered, my options were limited. But I think the way that I actually managed to do this was pretty, like, I don't want to say it's impressive or anything like this. I'm not playing this on very hard difficulty. I'm not trying to impress the Total War YouTube community or anything like that. But I like the way that I actually managed to handle this pretty difficult situation, right? I did not have the firepower to completely stun them. And again, so here's the other thing, right, is that you can barely see this ridge got in the way of these riflemen. So what I was trying to do is just envelop their flank, and I couldn't because of this one tiny low ridge that got in the way of my dude's ability to fire on the flanks.
A unit is running from the battlefield, sir.
And basically that just meant that I left my poor Tosa Imperial Vanguard out there just getting absolutely fucking hammered before they could move up. And yeah, and it just sucks. It's just a bad situation to be in. And there was really no good option. Like, all of it kind of involved allowing a whole lot of casualties to accrue before I could really get my guns. But now I've got my artillery back up, and I'm moving my entire line all the way back to allow them to kind of come up and get into the kill zone with my artillery. So yeah, I mean, like, I feel like this could have been a much bigger disaster. I could have lost my guns. I could have kind of recklessly thrown away my spearmen. I could have lost my right flank there with my my infantry, but I was actually able to kind of like keep everything under control, keep my casualties down to, they were controlled, let's say. I was making calculated risks, and like, thankfully the game works well enough that works, right? Like, their infantry doesn't have the ability to really follow up any of their kind of advantages, right? And my infantry doesn't either. The riflemen are just too slow. There's just no way you can really sort of reliably get them to kind of charge up. So like, leaving my lines over here was fine, because as soon as I withdrew, once they get out of their range, they're not going to follow them up. And if they try, it's really not going to amount to anything. So I was able to make that kind of controlled withdrawal to this secondary ridge here, let my artillery, the strength of my whole army, right, start depleting them, and just let the AI kind of continue blundering in. So again, were I the AI, right, if I were the AI here on this advance, right, I know that they have artillery superiority, but I also know that once you get to this position, their artillery can't do shit. So what I probably would have done was try to arrange
Your men have killed their general, sir.
My lines on here. I would have tried to protect my cavalry as much as possible and got that to load up on a flank. And what I would have done is stack up on one side. I probably would have come over, probably over here onto the right, or onto, the Tosa Imperial Vanguard's left. And I would have sent my riflemen forward in kind of an oblique way, engaged, got all of my melee infantry and cavalry to start collapsing this flank, and then drive it all the way up. It's what I would have tried to do. I'm not sure if it would have worked. I'm certain the AI wouldn't have made this sort of secondary fallback position. It's just not something they're really capable of. But yeah, as soon as they did, I probably would have tried to stack up here, engaged generally along this line, gotten some of my rifle infantry and cavalry on the flank,
the enemy,
and just shoved them away. And I think I could have done it if the armies were evenly matched as they were. I think I would have been able to do it. I still would have taken a lot of casualties. There's just nothing you can really do to avoid that if you have no artillery and your opponent has lots of artillery. Unless you have naval superiority and you can try to knock out their guns with their naval bombardment. But yeah, it's still pretty tough. But I like that, right? There was a fairly complicated, like, that's a 19th century battle, right? Like, if we were kind of looking at the sort of like National Geographic level kind of overhead view of all the little red arrows and stuff kind of moving around, like that. so much to me, like the new Total Wars don't really have that ability. It's like everything is based on trying to maximize your little like temporary power-ups and cooldown units and everything. And there's some of that in this, but generally I feel like this is the kind of a battle that you see described in 1870s warfare all the time. It's these sort of complicated movements and this advance, falling back from position to secondary position when you're overmatched, trying to let your artillery do as much damage as possible, and really just trying to play to protect your own troops. And I feel like I did that really well, and I feel like that that would not be out of place in a real battlefield. And the fact that this game can still actually simulate that pretty well is pretty neat, I think. But anyway, the rest is just mop up, trying to kill as many of their dudes as possible so they don't just randomly wander around sabotaging things in my territory. So anyway, that's that.